If you have enjoyed the presentation of Veronique or some of the other presentations of today, then I have good news for you. If you would like to see them again, they will all be available on our YouTube channel. And then it's time for our next presentation by Karel Sablon. He's a senior consultant at Keyrus, and he's specialized in implementing analytic solutions for sales and marketing. And today, Karel is going to share with us his experiences on diving into weblog data with SAS on Hadoop.
Thank you very much. Okay, welcome here in the presentation on a case we did on SAS on Hadoop. So like Nele presented, I mostly work for marketing intelligence departments. So typical analytics teams doing predictive models, clustering analysis, data exploration, and basic, but also interesting reporting on marketing and sales, so to support sales in campaign management. So let me introduce our case. Who ever tried to open a 1.5 gigabyte file on a computer? Most people do it, and most people regret it after 2 seconds when they try to do it. If you see 1.5 gigabyte like this, it's not impressive. Today we have big servers, database systems that really easily can handle it, but the team where I worked for, this was typically the size of data they handled on a regular basis. So marketing intelligence, okay, they were not real informaticians, people who love to work with data. What was their problem? Until today they have 1.5 gigabyte, and it's really a web-based, website-driven company, and they really wanted to analyze their web traffic data. So what was changing the scene? Instead of working with 1.5 gigabyte files all the time, they received 1.5 gigabytes every hour. And they really wanted to work with the detailed data because they used to work with aggregated data, but they didn't get the real information they wanted. They worked, for instance, with data of 3-4 last days, but it was almost too much influenced on the events of that moment. Working with samples, just creating the samples, was really intensive. So the idea was, okay, let's go for an infrastructure, let's go for a solution where we can treat this data. And for this solution, we went big data. The idea was we go for a Hadoop solution. What were the main drivers to go for that solution? Is scalability. Until now, they thought about data in some terabytes. For the moment, when I talk about 1.5 gigabytes every hour, it's like 30 gigabytes every day. They want to analyze 6 months, 12 months of data. They're talking about 12 terabytes just as basic information, just before it was transferred. So they wanted a solution which was scalable in case they really needed more space that they could upgrade and downgrade, and a stable solution. So that's why we worked together with them to set up this environment. And we also want to do it with SAS, because people were used to work with SAS. These were no Python experts. They were no people used to make big programmation. They were people who worked in SQL and in SAS codes, used Enterprise Guide, Enterprise Miner, the typical SAS analytics tools. So what were the two questions they asked us? First case was a more volume-driven question, is discover the web traffic data. Like I explained, we have 6 months of data, 6 terabytes of data, get something out of it. The second one was a more velocity-driven. So check if the solution that we have, can it improve, for instance, our neural network models we use today, for which the scoring takes today more than 1 hour per day, and as we were thinking, putting more data in there, making more models, this was not enough. So it was going beyond this volume, also test, can this Hadoop solution also improve our speeds? Okay, what kind of solution we had? I'm not going through every detail, but it's a typical Hadoop solution there, which the ADFS, we use Hive tables, we use MapReduce jobs, but on top of that, we plugged the SAS solutions. So the SAS access, it's like you do a SAS access to Oracle or Teradata. It's just a plugin, and you can access your data, and then you use your tools like Enterprise Miner or Visual Analytics for exploration. First thing we did was loading the data actually into Hadoop, transfer text files with raw Adobe data just to HDFS, and then transform this data and load it into Hive tables, which was the most appropriate type of data we found out to work on this SAS environment. MapReduce, we want to get the power of MapReduce, but like I explained, we don't want people to be specialists in writing MapReduce jobs. Even Python, on the long run, they were thinking, okay, maybe 1 or 2 people from the team should do this, but 10, 15 analysts must be able to continue working with the tools as today. So that's why we use the SAS in Hadoop, which generates actually these MapReduce, these test jobs behind the scene, just by typing your SAS code. Okay, another Hadoop component we used was typically Ambari to follow up our jobs. It was one of our favorite tools just to follow up, and then you can see the progress in a percentage, and we're used to push the F5 button to see, is it already finished? And yes, so the Ambari. The tools we used from the SAS platform were typically SAS Data Integration Studio, and this was really interesting because lots of our data was not lots of our work was not really fancy analytics. It was just ETL job. Extract data, transform it, and load it in the information. And we needed to do this in a structured way where you can do audits on, or for instance, impact analysis. Once somebody change a column, see what other jobs are affected by this. So really plain ETL work, but had to be done in the Hadoop environment. That's why we use Data Integration Studio. And we used SAS Visual Analytics for data exploration. So here, for instance, you have an overview. It was like the people from Bix, they also use these Sankey diagrams to analyze web pattern data. And last but not least, we also use the high performance nodes from SAS. It's typically in Enterprise Miner, there are specific nodes for high performance neural networks, machine learning algorithms, random forest things, so that you can use this in a point and click way to work with it. Okay, what were the benchmarks? Okay, if we want to do a proper benchmarking, we should compare apples with apples. So what did we do? We compared it with a server, because you can always say, okay, you go for Hadoop, you want to test volumes and velocity. What if you go for a server solution, it was a SQL server, and tune it in the right way to treat these amounts of data? What we saw there, if we query the test on 1 day of data, we queried basic query, but included some count distinct to test already a little bit, 35 seconds on a good environment. If we check Hadoop, also 35 seconds. The parsing in Data Integration Studio on 1 day of data took 50 minutes. And actually on the server or on Hadoop, we saw similar performances, also 15 minutes. Where came the difference? Once we tried to parse data of 1 week. It took 4 hours and 30 minutes on the server environment, and it took 53 minutes on the Hadoop environment. And this was really one of the key findings we saw there. Afterwards, we not limited ourselves to 1 week, we go for 1 month, 3 months at the same time, things that the other server were not able to perform. So what was the main finding we had? If you stay with smaller data, and smaller we say like 100, 200 gigabytes of data, okay, if you want to treat that, tuning your server could be a solution. If we go for terabytes at the same time, well, there you see the added value, and I'm not a specialist of big data, but I really saw what's happening, and it performed better. Okay, just to finish, what were the lessons learned in this SAS on Hadoop case? First of all, what was really interesting was the ease of use. Once everything was set up, I could just do SAS coding afterwards, like nothing changed. You use Enterprise Guide, Enterprise Miner, tools like this, point-and-click environment, everything works directly on the Hadoop environment. So for the analysts, once everything is good, once everything is stable, it's a really interesting solution. From the benchmarks, what we see, it's really only interesting if you go for real big data, in case you have a lot of data to analyze. What's also important is, okay, maybe I'm a bit contradictory here where you say you don't have to be a specialist, but when you see if you want to get everything out of it, you need a good knowledge of Hadoop. What do I mean? SAS has developed a lot of nodes, a lot of functionalities specifically for Hadoop, and if you're a Hadoop, you have to know, for instance, do I create a Hive table? Do I create an org table, for instance? And for that, you need Hadoop knowledge. You do it in SAS, but you have to know Hadoop. But it's actually the same if you use, for instance, SAS on a Teradata or an Oracle environment. You have to know the database environment to get everything out of it. The most difficult one actually was the good setup of the Hadoop. And what's that? Is to set Hadoop in the right way so that SAS works together with it properly. And that's actually the key finding, that the teamwork is really important in the beginning. Have people aboard who know Hadoop and who know SAS to install it properly, because once everything is running smoothly, it works very good. Thank you.